Hey everybody, I'm so glad to be back with you for this Wednesday midweek recharge. I want to start out our midweek recharge this week by asking you a simple question. How are you doing? Now before you respond with a very glib, oh I'm fine or I'm okay, I want you to stop and really consider this. How are you really doing? And not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as well. And I want you to be honest with yourself. If I'm honest with you, I would tell you that I am struggling these days, and I have been for a while. Some days it is just a struggle to make myself get up out of bed in the morning. It's just so hard, it takes everything I have. I'm just so very tired. Not necessarily physically tired. I'm probably the most well-rested from a sleep perspective that I've been for a long time. No, it's a mental and emotional fatigue that I think I'm suffering from. And I don't think I'm the only one. Recently, I had a friend of mine, someone that I consider to be a very strong individual, tell me that a lot of weeks she simply cries her way through Mondays. Now that makes me very sad for her, but it does give me some comfort that I'm not the only one dealing with this. Originally, this sense of tiredness was called quarantine fatigue or pandemic fatigue, but for me, it's gone beyond that. I recently read an article about crisis fatigue. Crisis fatigue is defined as unrelenting stress that can leave people feeling many intense emotions such as fear, anxiety, anger, and fatigue. Perhaps we should call this 2020 fatigue because we have faced so many crises here in this year. Not just the pandemic, but the severe weather all over the country and very close to home. Earthquakes and wildfires, the highly charged political environment, the fragile nature of our economy, and the protests that we've seen, both violent and peaceful. I think this is what I might be suffering from, and maybe you are as well. The article goes on to describe the stages that we go through in response to a crisis. First, there is the heroic stage. That's where most people join together and put forth a lot of action into a group effort to do what needs to be done there in the immediate crisis. Next, there's the honeymoon stage, where people continue to feel good about being a part of the community and the hopeful solution. The author says invariably after that stage is the disillusionment stage, where we can begin to face crisis fatigue. This phase can last for several months, until the crisis begins to subside and the individuals begin to work on recovering and rebuilding. From a physiological perspective, our flight or fight response kicks in early in a crisis, and short-term stress is our friend. But the adrenaline we had in the beginning, which helped us invest a lot of energy in those early phases, eventually becomes our enemy. Our human bodies just can't sustain a high adrenaline state for very long, and a crash becomes inevitable. Hence, crisis fatigue. So what can I do, or what can we do to fight crisis fatigue? Well, a couple of weeks ago, Lucy gave us some tips in her midweek recharge that I'd like to reiterate, and then I'd also like to add some of my own. Her first tip was to take care of your physical well-being. You want to avoid comfort foods, and you want to eat healthy foods at appropriate times and in appropriate amounts. You want to get plenty of sleep and rest, and exercise outside if possible. I have found that a walk in the sunshine does wonders for both my physical and my mental well-being. Number 2, you want to stay connected with friends, your family, and society as a whole. Rather than waiting on somebody to call you, you take the initiative. Reach out to them, call them, text them, send them an email. And if possible, communicate in a manner which allows you to see them in person. Hearing a person's voice is great, but seeing their facial expressions is all the more wonderful. This is also a great time to stay plugged into your church family, knowing what's going on at your church and how you can be a part of what's happening there, even if it is from a distance. Number 3, grab a notepad and a pen, and each night before you go to bed, make a note of the good things that were found in that day. the little triumphs, no matter how small, and the sweet moments that made that day extraordinary. Maybe it was a card or a phone call, a joke or a laugh, or the taste of fresh fruit or a delicious meal, or something beautiful that you saw on that walk outside. Try to find the good in each day and make a note of it. Literally write it down to remind yourself that there was good in that day. Number 4, focus on the things that you can control and don't fixate on the things that you can't. This is where limiting your media exposure can come into play. Find you a good, legitimate source of news and check that source no more than twice a day. And then limit the time that you spend on Facebook and other social media platforms. Too much time spent on social media can only exacerbate your feelings of fear and anger and frustration. Number 5, find an activity that you can enjoy and do safely. Reading, fishing, sewing, art, gardening. Engage in something that can take you to a good place and provide a distraction from the constant bombardment of bad news. Phil and I recently took a distraction break and watched the Marvel's Avenger movie Endgame. That's a 3-hour movie. And for that period of time, we were transformed to another place and time, which was a great distraction for the two of us. Number 6, remember that this is a transitional phase and this season will pass. Now I know it seems like it will never be over and it just goes on, but it will pass. Transition is about letting go, adapting as necessary in the moment, and then preparing to build again in the future. Begin to make plans now for what you will do in the future when the crisis has subsided. Number 7, if you find yourself unable to move forward or that these self-help measures don't help you enough, it's important and it's okay to seek help from a mental health professional. These are uncharted waters for all of us. And right now, it's okay to not be okay. Lastly, remember that God sent his son Jesus to earth, and he came as Emmanuel, God with us, in human form. So he not only sees and knows what we're going through, but he knows what it feels like as well. He is with us all around, in front of us, behind us, beside us, and within us. Isaiah 46:4 gives me comfort in these days. The verse says, I have made you, and I will carry you. I will sustain you, and I will rescue you. One of my favorite Christian music groups is Building 429. They currently have a song out that is entitled Fear No More. This song speaks to me right where I am right now, dealing with crisis fatigue in my life. I encourage you to look up the song and listen, but I wanted to share some of the lyrics with you here in closing. The song says, I'm wishing I could see the finish line, where this ends, where it lands. Guess I lost my vision when the pain set in. Can I believe when I don't see? Can I really let it be out of my hands when it's out of my hands? This isn't what I choose, but it's where I'm finding you. When I'm broken and undone, your mercy's just begun. You overcome my doubt. Your hands are reaching out. You hold me through the storm, and I will fear no more. Amen.